Thanks, everyone. I think we've got that figured out. So welcome to the Committee of the Whole Elected Officials Forum for Thursday, February 3rd. I want to start off by acknowledging that we are meeting and doing our business on the unceded and traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. We thank the nation and their ancestors for stewarding this land since time immemorial and commit to working with the nation on a government-to-government basis. And I want to acknowledge Councillors Frank and Councillors Everson who are on the call today. We will have I'll have a few opening remarks, and then we will have, I'll move it over to officials from TVI to have a presentation, and then we're going to have a discussion. So on the agenda, could I have a motion for to move the elected official forum, building the visitor economy through regional tourism report for receipt?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
And seconded, thank you. And I'll start off with opening remarks. First of all, welcome elected officials from Courtenay, Comox, Cumberland, and the Comox First Nation. Today's session has been organized as a bit of a kickoff to the next chapter of tourism services for the Comox Valley. Recent changes in the service has resulted in a new service delivery contractor and new partners to enable a regional delivery model. Tourism is an important part of our local economy, creating jobs, generating wealth, and supporting our area's unique qualities and offerings. It also contributes to the development and maintenance of infrastructure that benefits our entire community. But tourism can also sometimes put stresses on local communities, bringing negative impacts to the environment and other social and cultural aspects of life. To help us navigate this complex relationship, we are grateful to have the skills and expertise of Tourism Vancouver Island with us today. TVI is delivering the tourism and destination marketing services for the Comox Valley and is a seasoned not-for-profit destination marketing organization. As one of 5 regional tourism organizations across the province, TVI can help steward a sustainable and resilient long-term tourism industry here in the Comox Valley. Today's presentation will introduce you to their organization, their approach for marketing and visitor services, and provide important information on where things stand in the industry in light of the global pandemic. Time has been set aside for a Q&A session, so we hope you take this opportunity to ask questions and share your perspectives with the presenters and with your regional colleagues. A reminder that today's meeting is being live streamed. Well, it's being recorded and we will stream it in a bit. As an elected officials forum, no decisions are to be made during this meeting, but discussion and respectful debate is encouraged. And for those of you, we've lost a little bit of our visual, but I hope everyone knows how to use the raised hand feature on Zoom. That's how I'll be able to figure out whose hands are up. Please let us know by unmuting if you're having any kinds of technical difficulties, like we're having a little bit. So it sounds like our feed is refreshing. But while we're doing that, I think I will turn it over to TVI. And I'm not sure who will be presenting on behalf of TVI. If it's Anthony, if you're saying opening words.
Yeah, hi, it's Anthony Everett here. I'm happy to take the handle if you like.
Sure,
you'll hear it's a team approach today, so okay.
Great.
Okay, hello, I'm Anthony Everett. I've presented to many of you before. If you don't know me, I'm the CEO of Tourism Vancouver Island. With me today is Karen Bannister, who's going to share her screen, and we have a presentation for you. And Karen is the lead in a lot of our work in communities, and particularly around destination marketing. Callum Matthews is on your screen, and he'll be talking to you today about the destination, Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands, and some of our work. And it really is going to start where we are. Should I keep? Okay. I'm proud to live and work on Shinamak territory, where our home office is in Nanaimo. And we gratefully acknowledge these ancestral lands, unceded territories that were under the Kwakwaka'wakw, Muchalnath, and Coast Salish peoples. I think you'll be hearing a little bit about our work today with our Indigenous communities and people on Vancouver Island. We're honored to be here, to be doing this work with you, for you. Today's forum is kind of step two. We also had a forum that Karen will touch on probably with a lot of your industry, tourism industry, and that was just prior to Christmas. And then we'll be doing lots of that. So Callum will fill you in on a little bit of some of our engagement efforts. For me, I really just wanted to set the scene. There's lots of questions. I think I've presented and in your part of Vancouver Island a few times about over the last couple of years around the pandemic, the impacts that we're seeing in the visitor economy and things. But I don't want to go too heavy on it because I think all of us have been living this for so long. The more we, it seems to be ongoing issues that we're running into. So as Tourism Vancouver Island, we see ourselves as stewards of tourism here on Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. We work with communities, businesses at all levels, and I'll talk a little bit about the industry that we work with across Canada and the province. We have many years of experience as destination management professionals, and we're very passionate about where we live. Every day we get up and think about what's best for tourism, best for our communities. And you're going to hear a lot about trying to strike that balance that was introduced in the opening remarks between the effects of tourism, both good and bad. And that's something that we're very passionate about and work every day on. And that we're trying to maximize those, but also minimize the negative aspect of that. And that really is tourism management. We are part of Tourism Vancouver Island, is part of a national system, a provincial system. You heard in our introduction, the 5 regional organizations that exist. We also work with Tourism British Columbia. So the maple leaf that says BC, that is representative of Destination British Columbia, which is the crown that we are contracted to offer some of our services, or through the crown organization called Destination British Columbia. Destination Canada, similarly, is the national organization that sells Canada worldwide. Both those organizations we work with on a regular, if not daily basis. And we bring that to our region and to the communities that we serve and the businesses we serve. And finally, we're very honored to be doing this work in the Comox Valley, and we're doing it elsewhere on the island. So when we talk about the state of the industry is showing some incredible resiliency. I don't think any of us in 2020 would have thought it was really a challenging time, and it continues to be challenging, but the industry has been quite resilient. Our approach back then, and it's getting harder and harder to remember all that we've been through in the last couple of years, but in the beginning, it was really trying to understand businesses' needs, what their losses were, and we were hearing tens of millions of dollars in losses in those first 3 to 4 months because of the impact of travel. It has shifted and changed so many times that businesses have largely learned to adapt. Many of them are still struggling. Many of them are suffering with low percentages of revenues, particularly in the activity sector. Our job was to find the best solution for businesses and advocate to the provincial government and the federal government. During that time, I think for almost 7 months, I was on an 8 a.m. call every day with provincial ministry and ministries to talk about the impacts of tourism. And we really thought the best approach, from what our businesses were telling us, is to find the ability to work with operators directly to help them get through the time. And it is ongoing. We are still running that program, which is on the next slide, which is really, we offered one-on-one support. So this became our core program of helping businesses get through the pandemic. It's called the Tourism Resiliency Program. It was created with the generously funded by ICE-T, and that program was so successful and was quickly created by Tourism Vancouver Island. It went province-wide, and it is still in operation today. On Vancouver Island, we've been advising over 500 businesses. It's evolved from helping businesses find support for their own businesses through different grants and programs that government was offering, bring to expertise that is now helping businesses grow their businesses and adapt to the current needs through digital resources and many other resources. And as I said, that is going forward right now as we speak. Interestingly enough, you can see this slide really shows you, we track people arriving to Vancouver Island. This is domestic travelers. And I just want to share and some of you will have seen this slide, but I think this is quite powerful for those of us all of us who live here, is the orange line shows, if you see how low the numbers were of visitors coming here through the circuit breaker, you can only imagine the impact. And then you see it climbing, numbers last summer coming up to the peak in August. So in August, more domestic travelers came to Vancouver Island than at any other time in our history on this island. So if it felt busy and crowded in your community, that's because it was. And we have the data that now really shows the impact of people coming this past summer. And there's a whole range of reasons for that. But I think it's powerful to see just where we're going and how this is working in our communities and on Vancouver Island. And it's something that we are spending a lot of time thinking about the best approach to deal with visitor movement and seasonality and all these kind of things. So the top industry concerns that we are hearing from across Canada, these were collated in a document that Destination Canada produced at the end of last year called Tourism's Big Shift. And it's really focused on coming out of the pandemic stronger and what we need to do. We all need to think differently, but these are some of the concerns. And you're hearing it in the news on a daily basis, but right now we are struggling with connectivity and access of flights in and out of communities into our country. The biggest challenge going into the future, and I think that I'll be going into retirement and this will still be an ongoing challenge, and that is the labor and skills shortage in our sector. And government is very focused on that. And every week I'm in calls right now talking to government about this shortage. Costs have gone way up for businesses, and that is reflected in the prices that you see when you purchase your vacation. There's, as we know, some significant impacts to business travel and events going forward. So places like the Vancouver Conference Center in Victoria and Nanaimo and other places are really struggling with how to hold events. And we're hoping that the changes that we'll hear in February will hopefully alleviate some of that. When it says product degradation, what that means is that products are having to close. Some aren't surviving. So what we offer to the world in terms of products and activities and things that people purchase, there are not as many of those, and businesses are really struggling to offer the same services they did prior to the pandemic. And then something we hear a lot of, which is capital and liquidity challenges that businesses are having. Finally, we wanted to set the stage for what Callum will go into and Karen will build on in your area, in that our focus as Tourism Vancouver Island, through our board and our work in the future and currently, is really focused on the word balance, trying to balance benefits of the visitor economy with doing social good, being a good partner in all these communities that we work with on Vancouver Island, in your area and other areas. We are focused on a sustainability program Callum will be talking about. We put Indigenous reconciliation as a core pillar in our approach to our work, and continuing to offer business supports coming out of the pandemic and into the short term, hopefully into the long term as well, as we help businesses build back stronger. We really are focused here on Vancouver Island on building more collaboration and cohesion between communities to really build out our tourism ecosystem. This is coming out of the pandemic. And finally, that we really believe that an overall holistic view of destination management, tourism management, is required on Vancouver Island. And Callum is going to fill you in on many efforts that we're doing. We're very proud of our work here that we've expanded into around sustainability and other initiatives. And I'm going to throw it over to Callum to speak further, and I'll look forward to questions towards the end. You'll also hear from Karen momentarily. So Callum, over to you.
Great, thanks, Anthony. Over the next several slides, I want to share some of the work that we're doing at the regional level to ensure the really long-term success of Vancouver Island as a destination. When it comes to the concept of destination management, I'll dig into that in a couple of slides from now, but one of the key pillars is this concept of destination development. And to me, that's really a measured and collaborative long-term approach to thinking about the destination and ensuring that we have the experiences and infrastructure that is required in order to ensure the long-term success and resilience of the destination. For us, the starting point really was in 2016 when we worked with Destination BC, as well as hundreds of tourism partners from across the Vancouver Island region, including hundreds of businesses, just about every chamber of commerce in the region, business improvement groups, local governments, economic development organizations, First Nations, and even a broad range of community associations. And we worked over the course of about 2 years to develop a 10-year destination development strategy that really articulates and outlines our path to ensuring that we're a resilient, sustainable, and remarkable destination well into the future. Out of that planning process, we came up with this shared vision, which I think still certainly holds true today. Vancouver Island is a vibrant and sustainable tourism destination that offers remarkable products and experiences that are authentic, driven by visitor demand, exceed expectations, and align with community desires. Although at that time, our organization hadn't really honed in on this concept of balance as an industry, but you can start to see the early beginnings of that real focus area for our organization, focusing on community vibrancy and the desires of residents, having authentic product rooted in Vancouver Island, and a real focus on sustainability as well. A couple of priority areas, it's a really long, very detailed plan that is very much a working document for our team and for many of the community organizations focused on tourism around the island. But these are some of the key priority areas that were identified through that process. Indigenous tourism development, pre-pandemic, it was, I believe, the fastest growing sector by every measure, and a real driver of reconciliation and economic development. We also prioritize the development of trail experiences, developing new trails, and ultimately enhancing and protecting the trails that we have already. As is identified through just about every planning project I've ever been involved in, wayfinding and signage. So we wanted to work on that, find consistency, and focus on communicating appropriate messages to visitors that help them to be more respectful and responsible when they're in our destinations. Shoulder season product development was another huge focus. We know that our summer seasons are strong and busy, even during the pandemic, but we also know that most or many businesses aren't able to offer year-round employment to their staff because of the slower shoulder and off seasons. Creating product, extending the viability of businesses operating in the shoulder seasons continues to be a huge priority for us. Sustainability and regenerative tourism, the concept that tourism is most effective when it is a net positive contributor to the communities, leaving more than it takes. Marine experiences and services. We're an island destination that's very unique, and continuing to support the development of our marine experiences is key. And we've also really honed in on a sustainability and stewardship piece oriented around the marine experience and marine sector that I'll talk about a bit more. And last but certainly not least, our organization is really committed to supporting the development of tourism in our rural and remote communities. We know that as many communities in the Vancouver Island region are transitioning from traditional resource sectors, tourism becomes a really positive and strong opportunity for them to seek, resident and retention and expansion activities, and also to, ultimately ensure the livability and long-term vibrancy of our rural and remote communities. Although our team is really passionate about responsible travel and sustainability, we'll be the first to admit that we are not experts in it. And that's why we've partnered with the Responsible Tourism Institute, which is an internationally recognized and leading organization. It's really popular and well-established in Europe. And essentially, it provides a certification for sustainable destinations called the Biosphere Certification. Similar to the UNESCO Biosphere, it's based on the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but it's a different program than the UNESCO Biosphere Initiative. But it's really complementary to to the overall focus areas of UNESCO biospheres. And our organization's been working with the UNESCO biosphere organizations on Vancouver Island. And ultimately what the biosphere certification does for us is it helps to articulate an action plan and a path for us to really be able to drive the UN Sustainable Development Goals forward and really pushing that focus of balance in our destination. Next slide, please, Karen. We started this process quite early in 2021, and the first big hurdle for us was submitting a very, very comprehensive application. And it was a whole of team approach where every member of the TVI team contributed to the development of that plan. And we relied on a lot of experts and subject matter experts to help us complete that application. We then worked with the Responsible Tourism Institute through an audit process to evaluate their measures of sustainability in a destination to understand where we on Vancouver Island fit. Next, and this is really the exciting part for us, is action planning. It is articulating the role that we as Tourism Vancouver Island will play in advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It identifies and sets key measurements and goals. And in order for us to maintain certification in the Biosphere program, we need to meet or exceed those goals. And finally, but not least, we really understand that we as an organization can only have so much impact. And the success of our destination in the long term and a focus on sustainability really relies on us as an organization being able to inspire other community tourism organizations, as well as our business community, to become a part of the Biosphere program and to help amplify that and bring it to life on the local level. We launched a pilot program, which was built on the, sorry, Karen, if you could just hop back a slide there, which was built on the Tourism Resiliency Network and adopted that same framework of customized one-on-one support. And through that initiative, our businesses were able to work with experts in the space to develop a decade of action plan that articulates the sustainable development goals that they want to advance in their own business practices. They engaged their staff teams, set goals, and are working on ways to make incremental year-over-year improvement and report on that and communicate it. It was a really successful pilot project and something that we're looking forward to delivering on a much larger scale in the future. I also wanted to take a bit of time to showcase some infrastructure projects. For me, this is really how the destination development strategy is starting to come to life. One of the big challenges that we all recognized from the very onset of the planning process is that a plan is really only as good as the funds that are committed to actioning it. A silver lining of the pandemic is certainly the amount of infrastructure funding that has come from various levels of government to support the recovery of the tourism sector. And we're certainly grateful for the various funds that have flown to the Vancouver Island region to support development. In terms of rural and remote communities, we're really grateful once again to the Island Coastal Economic Trust for stepping up and providing funding for staff positions around Vancouver Island focused on community development or economic development in rural and remote communities. We have been fortunate enough to receive funding for 2 staff positions, one of which is oriented around supporting any rural and remote community, and the other is a partnership specifically with the village of Tassis. With the broader position, we've been able to work with many communities, but 2 that I wanted to showcase here. The first being Bamfield, where we've been able to work with the tourism sector, the Chamber of Commerce, and a community association to create a pavilion, a covered outdoor area that was something very much desired by residents as a gathering space and also much needed by visitors. And this was a really unique collaboration with the UBC architecture program. And it'll be a one-of-a-kind pavilion that'll ultimately be a destination in itself. But it's a beautiful example of creating infrastructure that supports tourism, but also supports resident quality of life. Another meaningful project we've been engaged in is supporting the community of Gold River. Once again, partnering with the community association to support the development of a signage and wayfinding program that will essentially help to direct visitors to some of the key sites and locations throughout Gold River, with a real focus on driving business and spending to their sort of would-be downtown area. Next slide, please, Karen. Another area around trails that we're particularly excited about is the immense potential that Vancouver Island has to be one of Canada's only year-round mountain biking destinations. In order to help achieve this, we've partnered with nonprofit mountain bike associations across the Vancouver Island region to fund trail development and maintenance, as well as a bit of training and other services to help enhance the ability of those nonprofit societies to maintain their trail networks. I think that we in tourism have long recognized that these nonprofit clubs were driving and enabling us to welcome mountain bikers and supporting the tourism sector massively. But we as tourism weren't necessarily contributing to the success of these local organizations. So we're really proud to be able to step up and support these clubs across the Vancouver Island region, including Cumberland, Nanaimo, Ucluelet. We're in the process of nailing several other partnerships down as well that we'll be announcing in the next week or two. So really excited about this potential that we have for Vancouver Island. And I think this certainly speaks to a huge area of opportunity for the Comox Valley. As I hinted at earlier, our team is incredibly passionate about the ocean. As an island destination, we're somewhat unique on a global scale. And we believe that the ocean is a key experience or a key part of every visitor's experience to the destination. We've partnered with Surfrider and Ocean Legacy to establish marine debris drop-off points and to upgrade a major recycling center, which is focused on facilitating the responsible removal and diversion of plastics and other debris. We're also supporting work direct with businesses, helping them to find strategies to reduce and redirect waste from their operations. And we're currently in the process of searching for new partners. One potential that we're currently exploring and certainly welcoming partnership opportunities is with local marinas on microplastic and plastic debris collection, which would actually, the goal would be to remove plastics right from the harbor environment in a way that's easy to clean up. So certainly searching for future partners there as well. Another area that really aligns between the needs of visitors and of residents comes, around public space. We've partnered with our friends at the Island Coastal Economic Trust once again for the Thrive program, where we each provide matching dollars, which helps communities to action innovative ideas that are ultimately focused on reinventing underutilized public spaces. We've seen many positive applications come through over the past several months. There is an ongoing intake for applications, and I believe that some communities in the Comox Valley Regional District have received funding through this program to make strategic and targeted enhancements to public areas. Our team is also passionate about ancient forests. We know, as was identified in the recent New York Times top 52 places to visit this year, that ancient forests are a unique product experience that we have on Vancouver Island, certainly a part of our island identity and something that visitors are really interested in seeing. Although I think Cathedral Grove is perhaps the best example of that, and anyone who's driven past there in the summer has seen the madness and number of visitors who are trying to have that experience. So we've been working to partner with organizations to invest in safe and environmentally conscious visitor experiences in our ancient forests. One project that we've that's already public is a partnership with Tloquet First Nation in the Tofino area, where we are helping them to enhance their Miras Island Trail and Boardwalk experience. And that significant investment will help to improve Boardwalk to ensure that it is accessible and meets visitor standards, that it protects sensitive root systems of ancient trees. And we're also supporting a really serious investment into their dock infrastructure to lower the angle of the dock to provide better accessibility for guests. Another area where we've continued to focus on ancient forests and public recreation in general is a partnership with Recreation Sites and Trails British Columbia. I think that many of us will recognize that they are, I would certainly say, an underfunded organization, and that they play a huge role in ensuring the success of our destination, in particular our rural and remote areas where these recreation sites are incredibly popular. And we've partnered with them through a $480,000 investment to make targeted improvements at several areas, which were really receiving huge numbers of additional visitors. Many of these areas are also aligned with our focus on ancient forests. The one that I want to showcase in particular would be Grant Bay, where a very very remote and very basic services at that recreation site, but it received huge numbers of visitors that massively outpaced what the facilities there could handle. So we, working with rec sites and trails, were able to respond with targeted investments to ensure that there's adequate number of washrooms and other facilities that guests rely on, and that will also help to ensure that we protect that really special part of the North Island. In terms of signage and wayfinding, we are working with Indigenous communities to support place name signage. We really believe that it's important for our visitors to recognize the territories that they're visiting. And we also believe that this will help to support more responsible and respectful visitation. We're currently continuing to work to develop new project and partnerships to advance this area. One that I wanted to talk about in particular was in Pacific Rim area, partnering with several Indigenous communities and the local tourism organizations in Parks Canada to have new and enhanced territorial acknowledgement signage that helps to tell the story of that area and really pay respect and acknowledge the territory that visitors are finding themselves on. And a key piece for us is tracking our ongoing progress. And we've made a joint investment with the other regions in British Columbia to establish a tourism impact portal. It will be a go-to source for tourism-related statistics and indicators, and it will really enable us to track the region's recovery. It'll help us to support investment attraction, and it will, most importantly for I think our organization, enable us to track the progress that we're making with respect to the action plan for our Biosphere Sustainable Destination certification. So how can the Comox Valley get involved? We're really delighted that many of the projects areas that I went over earlier have participation from Comox Valley communities, but there are certainly more opportunities moving forward. We have an upcoming action planning process that's essentially reprioritizing that destination development strategy that I mentioned at the start of my presentation. And we will soon be launching that process in the Comox Valley area, reprioritizing investments that projects that we would like to see investments go towards. And certainly hope that all of our communities in the Comox Valley are engaged in that process. We're also looking for to hear about project ideas and priorities. And again, I'm really focused on projects that benefit residents as well as visitors and help to foster that balance in our destination. And last but not least, we bring relevant destination management information to the table for all of the work that we do. So when we're focused on Comox Valley work, we're really proud that we're able to bring a regional and provincial and national background to that work on a more local level that I think will hopefully to make investments much more focused and aligned with broader initiatives happening in the region. So as I mentioned, I think tourism organizations were traditionally almost entirely focused on marketing, making promises to visitors. And today we know and certainly recognize that that simply isn't enough. And that in order for us to have a successful destination that's working for our businesses, our residents, and also protecting our important natural spaces, we need to take a much broader look at managing the destination. To me, destination management incorporates four kind of primary pillars. The first would be leadership. And to me, leadership, it's about helping to guide the destination, working with all levels of government, working with our Indigenous communities and partners to really have a collaborative approach to support the long-term destination and striking that balance. One example is that I think could be replicated in the Comox Valley is going on in the community of Ucluelet right now, where they're involved in a master planning process for tourism. They have a official community planning process and a hotel tax renewal. And all three of those initiatives are happening in alignment. And we're ensuring that the hotel tax is helping to power the official community plan, as well as the tourism master plan. Another key piece, marketing, of course, helping to attract incremental visitation, particularly during the shoulder seasons and the off season. Industry training is another big priority area. One focus that I think will be touched on later is around supporting the increased digital sophistication of businesses. Destination development, which I went over in quite a bit of detail, would be the final of those pillars. Our team really believes that in order for us to be effective in the work that we're doing, whether it's at the regional level or a regional district or community level, we really need to be oriented towards the needs of our businesses and our residents. That's why we work closely with local governments, as well as a tourism advisory committee, which we're in the process of establishing. The Tourism Advisory Committee is a focus group of industry leaders representing tourism business owners and senior managers. And they're positioned to share their opinions, perspectives, help study ideas and opportunities, and develop recommendations in a small and focused group setting that'll help to provide direction on the work that we're doing in the Comox Valley. And this is just one of many opportunities for stakeholders to be engaged, and I'll share some of those other opportunities in a couple of slides. The mandate of the Tourism Advisory Committee is to provide input into the management and use of the City of Courtenay's MRDT dollars, as well as other tourism-related funds, such as Destination BC's Cooperative Marketing Partnership Program, which we're able to access thanks to the collaboration of other communities in the Comox Valley. The TAC is also going to be focused on advising, reviewing, and recommending annual marketing plans, budgets, and associated performance and financial reports for final approval and submission by the City of Courtenay or the Regional District, working collaboratively to grow the economic benefits and the social benefits of tourism in the Comox Valley, and strengthen the region's reputation as a preferred and year-round overnight destination. Provide the City of Courtenay, CVRD, and Comox Valley Tourism with advice and recommendations on a variety of tourism-related matters. And I think perhaps most importantly, to represent the best interests of tourism stakeholders from across the region. So we're really challenging members on the committee to wear that regional hat and think more than just about their own business and their own sector. Though I won't go into all the details here, kind of an overview of the membership matrix that has been established for the advisory committee. And I think what you'll see is we, through our work in other parts of the region, have found that about a dozen people is the right number where we can have good collaborative conversation and also ensure that there's fairly broad representation. We have 5 representatives from accommodation businesses, and the others are being drawn from other tourism sectors. The reason why there's 5 accommodation business seats represented is because accommodation businesses are collecting the municipal and regional district tax. And we believe that this is a fair and equitable way to ensure that they, as the sort of hosts of our guests, are deeply involved in the advisory process. And we believe that the other seats cover that sort of broad range that helps to contribute to the success of the Comox Valley. And you'll also note that there is balance between the seats for businesses representing Courtenay, as well as businesses being drawn from the broader Comox Valley. And that speaks to our commitment and desire for a regional approach for tourism. And as mentioned, there are many other opportunities that we use to work with the broader community. One of which would be a momentum group. And that's a really great opportunity for us to collaborate with partner organizations from across the region. They could be, arts groups, community associations, chambers of commerce, etc. And this is really about sharing our priorities and them sharing theirs, and us finding common ground and developing projects that we can then take to the advisory committee for deeper and more focused discussion. But I think of the momentum group as the more behind the scenes place where we can really do the nitty-gritty work of partnership and project development. We also, as Anthony hinted at, had a forum in November, which was focused on sharing our priority areas as an organization and gathering feedback from the sector. We had really positive feedback for that forum, and I'm excited for us to be able to do that again throughout 2022. And another key factor, and something that we prioritize in all of our work, is transparency in reporting. We really believe that, especially given that this is a tax-funded initiative, that transparency is really key. And that's, honestly a foundation of all of the work that we do.
think this one is me. So thank you, Callum. I'm Karen Bannister. I'm excited to take you through some of the work that we've done in the Comox Valley to date. And then we can open up to questions, which I'm sure you have. So just to touch on the sustainability aspect of the tourism work that we've done, before we leave the broader conversation, I just wanted to touch on that slightly. So we are, as an organization, continually having conversations around how we apply sustainable tourism lenses to tourism marketing in particular. And that is the opportunity to not only attract the right type of traveler, the one that's invested in responsible travel measures, but also how we message to travelers in general about what's expected of them when they come to these beautiful areas of Vancouver Island. And so we are working with our partners to hopefully at Destination British Columbia to understand who the traveler is that's sort of best positioned to be able to be receiving those messages. And then we do want to recommend, and we'll talk about priorities in a moment for Comox Valley in particular, that we take a look in the Comox Valley at a concentrated destination development action planning process. And that would be an opportunity to really take a broader lens to what kind of growth we want to see in the Comox Valley. What does growth mean exactly? And then how does growth become balanced with the effects of tourism, as we're all aware. Other examples of work that we've been involved in other communities, and certainly that our industry is involved in currently, you may have seen them, things like pledges, asking people to come into a space and pledge to, leave no trace, participate in certain types of behaviors and not in others. From a content marketing perspective, just developing content that really educates people about being respectful. And then Tourism Vancouver Island has had some responsible travel initiatives to date, of which if it's, I'm not sure where we're at for time, so maybe I'll come back to this video if there is time, but we do have a couple of videos, and one we shared at our forum in November was really well received. It's quite inspirational, called Tread Lightly. So we started working in the Comox Valley in January of 2021, and that was under contract with the Comox Valley Economic Development Society. Our contract has since, as you know, moved over to working directly with the City of Courtenay and the Comox Valley Regional District. I want to acknowledge the work of staff members in both cases who are certainly learning the complexities of the tourism industry and the provincial tax in particular, called the hotel tax, and their work has really supported us, and we hope ours supporting them as well. One of the things we recognized right away in the Comox Valley was the opportunity to build a stronger brand presence. The logo and brand feel and look that was being used in tourism marketing previously, we just felt it needed and could benefit from an update. We've also known and from our consultation and work with Indigenous communities across Vancouver Island, we try to avoid colonial language whenever we can, and was pointed out to us by a couple of individuals in previous projects that the word discover has no place in Indigenous languages. And so we've moved from discover to experience, or in some cases, you've seen other organizations looking at destination instead of discover Comox Valley. We worked with a small group of individuals, including representation from Comox First Nation, which we're so grateful for, to identify what would be a better representation or a way forward of a representation for Comox when we go into tourism marketing. And that included taking a look at color palette, which the committee member, informal committee member, Emily Shoplin, was instrumental in supporting us in bringing this forward to Comox First Nation, to council to ask if we could mirror in the color palette the colors of Comox First Nation, and that kind of unity in the design, I think, is important. So one of the other things that we've been focused on is transitioning all social media channels on an organic perspective towards being a broader representation of the Comox Valley region. So including all of the communities, all of the distinct businesses within the communities and opportunities. And we advocate for a user-generated content approach, which is where you're really focusing on what the people that are out there on social media are capturing themselves, rather than, me taking my, a big camera out and shooting images. We've played for the last year, and we're working right now as well with the Comox Valley Record on the destination vacation guide that they produce. Our role in that is really to try to steer the content and the brand look as much as possible so that we feel it's representative of our industry. That is a product that the Black Press Media does do for ad revenue, and I have to say they've been a really incredible partner. We have some exciting things coming down the line. We had the opportunity to participate in a Food Network television show, and it will feature a Comox Valley restaurant. We're very excited for that to launch nationwide. And with that, we have partnered with Global Television and the Food Network to do some promotion specifically for tourism when that airs. These tumblers we created with the new brand and used them as an incentive, because what we really needed to do was build up a consumer email subscription. They when we took over, when we sort of started working in this space, we noted that there really wasn't a workable consumer database. So we really wanted to make sure that we had that as a marketer is your sort of owned channel. You don't have to rely on algorithms in order to reach people through those channels. And so that was one of our initiatives this fall. Right now, we're working on a campaign with Westjet and Comox Valley Airport. This opportunity came to us through Comox Valley Airport to use Westjet's digital channels to promote a Comox Valley message, fly into the airport. We're targeting the Alberta market. We are monitoring COVID and travel restrictions. We're always mindful of that. It is a difficult time for being in travel and being a marketer, but we're monitoring it as we go, so some of these things may shift. We're also currently working with the BC Ale Trail on a sip and stay campaign that features our wonderful breweries in the Comox Valley and encourages people to come stay in the Comox Valley, experience more than just beer, but then also experience those incredible breweries. The website, again, we're laying foundations here with some of the work that we're doing currently. The website that exists right now, we felt that there was room for improvement, and we've been working with an organization to support us in doing a website rehaul, and that's just a key element of any marketing that we're going to be able to do in the future. And Anthony mentioned the network that we exist inside of, Destination British Columbia being one that was mentioned at the province. They have a brand which we call the BC brand, and you've probably seen it. It's called Supernatural BC. It really behooves us to be aligned with that brand because there's so much equity that has been built into that brand. And so we've been working very hard to collect video and image assets that you've seen throughout this presentation that are aligned with that brand. And I'm happy to say that I was in a DBC presentation, albeit an internal one, a couple of weeks ago, and saw one of our Comox Valley images. And so that shift is starting to take place where we're able to feed this content to Destination BC for them to share it out on their broader channels. We're working on a winter campaign right now to focus energies on getting people out and about in the winter spaces in the Comox Valley, in particular on mountain. And so we'll be promoting the sort of perfect winter itinerary and working that into content on the website as well. And I mentioned this already, so I'm going to just skip through. We are going to take this piece of brand development further and continue, as I said, to work on a website reset and continued asset collection, video creation. Just had an amazing opportunity come across my desk today that I think will be really exciting to pursue for the Comox Valley. So a lot of fun and exciting things happening. To touch briefly on visitor services, and our visitor manager, Dino, isn't here. I think he's actually might be working in the visitor center today, but I'll provide this on his behalf, we tried to focus as much as possible on mobile visitor servicing this summer. We had a heat wave, so that did sort of compromise our ability to send staff out into outdoor spaces, but you'll see that reflected in some of the statistics I'm going to share. But we worked with communities in the Comox Valley to be able to provide the visitor servicing through the summer, and we're looking at sort of ramping that up into the next spring, summer, fall seasons. When we started there, took it upon, we were very focused on training, very much our ethos when we take into a contract on is to make sure that the visitor center staff and all frontline tourism staff, which is hopefully a second step we can commit to, have the appropriate training. And we do, DNO2's credit goes above and beyond in terms of training visitor center staff so that they have the full training from Destination BC's program, as well as several familiarization opportunities so they know the product that they're speaking to. I have also shared this in a different document. So if this is hard to read, there is that follow-up that you can see afterwards. It came up actually at a City of Courtenay presentation as well. And so I've provided the information here just to see the visitor center numbers in comparison to the previous year. You will see some differences, some reds and some greens. I want to make two cautionary notes about this data. One is that we count and may count our data differently than CVED staff did previously. We've only counted in this data the individuals who have directly engaged with us on a tourism or travel matter. So that doesn't include where is the washroom as an example. And we did see dips into the August month, you'll see, because we were not able to do the extent of roaming that we wished to, because as you remember, it was very hot. And also wanted to give you a comparison so you have an understanding of how much traffic that visitor center sees in with respect to sort of other areas of Vancouver Island and the province. So here's a small comparison. Comox Valley sitting at just shy of 12,000 visitors in 2021 versus Nanaimo at just over 8,000. Victoria is seeing or did see much more traffic than that. And so that's unnatural given the location. But hopefully this gives you a sense of sort of where the Comox Valley stands with respect to visitor centers in parts of BC. So as I said, we are looking for a decentralized model in 2022, which is where we're getting our visitor center staff out there into businesses, into public spaces, helping counsel visitors where they're at. We're focusing on training, continuing training and familiarization tours, and trying to look at specific opportunities to build partnerships in the communities. Overall, just so you get a sense again to go back to that Destination Canada report of what the key market trends are that our organization is definitely going to be grappling with over the next couple of months. The report is very interesting. We're obviously looking at a lot of domestic travel. The recovery from the pandemic in terms of international is going to be slow. It's going to be hard. And so as marketers, our best opportunities are in the domestic space. We've talked about responsible travel. Ascendance of communities relates to the work that needs to be done to track resident sentiment. Certainly on Vancouver Island, we've seen instances where COVID makes it so that people are a little bit more hesitant to bring people into their communities. And so we need to monitor that as well. Indigenous tourism product is in demand and will continue to be in demand in the future, as is the opportunity to be in wild open spaces, and health and wellness is a trend that we're seeing, I think, thanks to some of the repercussions or even benefits of COVID, I guess. And the other trends include the Great Resignation and retirement. A lot of people chose COVID as the opportunity to retire. And so what does that mean in terms of the number of people who might have disposable income and be able to travel? Another key priority for the Comox Valley is going to be building trust and transparency within the industry, with yourselves and with the staff and others within the community. And we're going to be focusing on that to a great extent because we recognize it's sort of at the center of everything that we're doing. We're going to be engaging a stakeholder engagement strategy. We are establishing regular, predictable reporting channels, both with yourselves, with staff, as well as with the businesses themselves. And Callum already mentioned the advisory committee, which will be struck in the next week or two. We're strengthening decentralized visitor servicing models by prioritizing roaming visitor counseling opportunities. And we really want to focus on building that brand awareness for the Comox Valley and the equity in that awareness so that we can get people traveling to the Comox Valley and experiencing it in a responsible way. And I just was asked to touch a little bit on some of the budget, just to give you a high level and understanding of what amount of funding is available. So the funding sources to tourism are summarized here. We've talked about the hotel tax and the DBC Open Pool Grant. We also, in some cases, would have earned revenue, which is the retail sales, as an example at the visitor center. We also, that visitor center receives typically a grant from DBC for operations, and then the Comox Valley has made a regional contribution. I recognize this might be a bit blurry actually now that I see it myself, or it's my eyes, but it gives you a little bit of a sense of an overall budget. There is, in this community, as with most communities on Vancouver Island and in BC this year, quite a bit of money still. It speaks to the COVID grants that came from Destination BC during COVID. And so it bumps this money continually forward. I think it's a very good opportunity for Comox Valley because we can invest in that recovery with this extra money. So carry forward from the previous calendar year is just an estimate at this time. We're trying to support the city of Courtenay as best we can, Callum and I, in understanding some of the MRDT reports that have since come through from the province. So this is my best my estimate. The new MRDT collection in this calendar year is also an estimate. It's just a forecast of previous years with a little bit of, psychic powers to see what the future will bring. City of Courtenay has elected to put funding towards affordable housing. So that is what is noted as OAP, online accommodation providers. That's your Airbnbs. And the local government contribution, the DBC grant has been announced, so that number is an actual. And there is also, as I said, this extra money in marketing, and so that money will carry forward into the next year. Grants Federal refers to Canada Summer Jobs. That's just a hope that we will get it again to service the visitor center, but we will be applying. And I already mentioned retail sales. In terms of expenses, this is how it breaks down. We're looking at just over 300, close to 400 in the marketing space. The engagement work and the development work, just shy of 90. And that's where we want to be focusing in on development plan is the recommendation, and other kinds of engagement with businesses to support them in their growth. Visitor services, administration, and then, as I mentioned, City of Courtenay has elected to put money towards affordable housing. And that brings us to questions from myself and my colleagues. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to someone else.
I can take that back, and I'll help to try and see who's up next for questions. But first of all, thank you very much for the whole TVI team for that presentation. Lots of information, and I'm sure folks are just digesting, but we already have a hand up from Director Arbour.
Thank you, and what an awesome team at TVI. I mean, I'm just so impressed by your presentations today and the work that you're doing. I think that's excellence in terms of getting into that seat the last couple of years, and giving new direction and energy to the programs. And this, so then of course people know me. I've become pretty direct, I think, over the course of the term. So this is not directed at TVI. This is kind of directed at my fellow elected officials. And I guess while I can recognize the excellence of the work, I have lost the plot as to what we are trying to achieve at local government in the tourism space. And by that, I mean, from a big picture perspective, we don't subsidize forestry, we don't subsidize construction. There's a lot of sectors that we don't subsidize, but all local governments in North America continue to subsidize the tourism sector. And so it leads to the question of what are we trying to achieve? And I go back to, so then I go back in my mind to our strategic drivers at the CVRD, which is climate change. And I have to say that one of the things that I loved about the pandemic is that we essentially stopped doing out of province marketing. partly because there is a regulation around that. But right now I'm looking at all the GHG emissions that are skyrocketing again as people start traveling around the world. And I'm like, why are we subsidizing national or international destination marketing? And I also note that in the MRDT budget, affordable housing gets the short straw, and marketing remains the dominant expenditure at about 50%, despite all the good work that Callum described. That's just one example. So I look at our strategic driver on the climate. I don't see full alignment. I really loved, so that's my feedback. I really loved the last 2 years where we had such great vibe around our communities, visiting each other, and spending the monies around. I know it doesn't add as much to our GDP for the province, but it was a really good vibe, and also lowered GHG emissions. Indigenous, I think your commitment to value for our Indigenous community. So that strategic driver, I'm pretty happy with. And then community partnership as well. So I think there's a lot to anchor the future. But for me, what I see in the communities is mostly a concern about tourism that remains, which is the impact. And when you mention growth, growth to what aim? I realize, and some of the last concerns in my comment will be, it's great that we have, an advisory committee that is fully composed of business and industry people, either accommodation providers or secondary kind of beneficiary from tourism business. But I'm pretty sure that the key there will be income generation. It won't necessarily be some of the mitigation and rethinking around why we're in this space. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks. I didn't hear a question, but I don't know if anybody wants to respond to Director Arbor specifically. I will move on then to Mayor Baird.
Thank you very much, Arzine. My question relates to the budget. And in that, reviewing that, there's money put aside. But my question is concerning the grant money that was approved by the CVIDs, that the organizations did not receive their funding in the last year. Is there any thought to giving that funding, or do the organizations have to reapply?
I'm not sure if I can fully answer that because I'm not privy to what happened before. I'm not sure if you're asking about UROC.
Yes, I am.
There's like blink twice if you are. That has come up. I do believe that the MRD, so what we have advocated for in the tactical plan was the inclusion of a fund that could support, and just looking at Callum just to make sure that I'm not misspeaking, that would support small community grants that would go towards the development of tourism product or the investment into tourism product. As for that particular commitment, I can't speak to, and I would probably defer to someone in the Comox Valley Regional District.
Thanks for that. Anything further, Director or Mayor Baird?
I just wanted to thank you very much for your presentations. It was absolutely amazing. It's brought up a lot of questions, and I'm sure once this goes to council, we're going to have additional questions and discussion. I too am concerned about the impact of tourism on our community. There is a divide in our community, pro tourism, and those that do not want to see any more tourism, that they figure that we're at our peak. And so it's going to be an interesting process to how to achieve a balance, and especially on the trails. And want to thank you for working with us on advertising the trail system, not the biking trails as much as has been done in the past, because they are multi-used trails.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Mayor Arnott next.
Yeah, thank you, Arzina. One of your first couple points there, and this is more of a statement, Your first couple points were access to flights, lack of access and reduced transport connectivity, and build of collaboration of communities. And I think that is an important part here, because the town of Comox has been criticized in the support of the regional airport, international airport that we have here. And I think that we do need to work together. We had sent a letter to the federal government requesting that they review the international flights that the local airport does. That met some criticism, and that's good. And that's good open dialogue that we have. But you know, people want to come into Comox. People in Comox want to go away for winter holidays too. So it was good near the end when you said that you are bringing in the airport into the destination marketing. So good on you for that. And it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Brown, Vicki Brown's next.
Thank you, and thanks so much for your presentations. Just wanting to reiterate the concern around impact. I know we are all aware of it, and I wonder. I see that the invite for the TAC has now closed, and just wonder if there's room to add perhaps conservation organizations or someone who might provide that input, environmental impact input to that group, given the concerns we have.
Perhaps I'll take this one, and Karen, you can add to it if you'd like after. So the TAC has been kind of approved by the city of Courtenay. So at this time, we don't plan to make any immediate changes to the membership matrix, but what I can say is that our team took an initial review to see the applications that were submitted. We were really delighted that there was a very broad representation across the individuals who submitted applications, and that I think once the group has been finalized, that I think we'll be satisfied, and that there will be individuals who represent a range of perspectives, including conservation and sustainability.
Thank you. Director Morin?
I think Director Hillian was before me. Thanks.
Go ahead, Director.
No,
Morin.
no, you're first.
Okay.
Don't fight over Zoom. Zoom says you're Director Morin, you're first.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much for the presentation. I'm really happy to see some of the direction and focus on the sustainability piece. And of course, like previous speakers, that's my concern as well. I think that it's the goal of that. There's still, I guess, questions of how you achieve that in reality. And I actually, to be honest, when I saw Grant Bay up there, my heart broke a little, because I would love to see a place like Grant Bay stay, difficult to get to and pristine. And I think there are areas that we need to take that approach with. When I think back to last summer or during COVID, we've had, everyone here can say that we've had huge impacts in our parks, beaches. Strathcona Park, as an example, Century Sam Lake was a super highway. Tons of impact to that trail. And I understand the piece about teaching folks about low impact, but I think I don't see how that actually transfers to behavioral change. And I know this is coming across as a bit negative, but I guess these are questions that I have, because places I've traveled to, they haven't been able to get that right in terms of impact of tourism. So I'm pretty concerned how that actually translates into low impact. So that's one question or comment. The other thing I wanted to ask is, are we collecting any feedback from visitors after the fact, in terms of, as an example, when I mentioned the Century Sam Lake and all the other places where we had just droves. I mean, Cumberland folks would tell you, cars practically lined up to Cumberland from the lake. Very car centric. We don't have anything in our communities that alleviates that, but many other parts of the world do. So they have shuttle buses, they have, public transit that's much better to get to places. And I see that's another huge impact. And so I'm wondering whether we're getting information from European visitors, as an example, where they say, we need to have places to rent bikes, or we need to have better transportation to these areas, because there are parts of the world that are further ahead with this. And so those are the points I wanted to make. And for now, and I just wondered if you had any information about gathering feedback from folks around suggestions of how to make our practices more sustainable and have less impact on our local areas. Thanks.
Well, I can certainly speak to the first part of that, and I think it's a really great, sort of challenge that you've posed, Director. And to be perfectly honest, I share your feelings. I, as a little kid, spent tons of time on the North Island in Rath Cove and Grant Bay and San Joseph Bay. And it's upsetting to see some of these special places be impacted. And though I wish there was a perfect, solution for this, there isn't. And it requires a lot of collaboration and partnership with a variety of organizations to make a difference with respect to that. To me, one of the positive things is that over the past 2 summers, more Islanders and BC residents than ever before were enjoying and exploring the outdoors. And that's positive and exciting, but it comes with huge challenges. So our approach has been to work really closely with BC Parks and with recreation sites and trails, as I talked about earlier. Some of that is supporting investment. And I would really challenge, I think at a provincial level, we need to see much more funding going towards, enforcement and enhancements in our recreation sites and parks to ensure that they're being managed effectively. But a big piece for us is knowing what parks can handle additional visitors and which ones can't. So that really informs the marketing work that we do. So we wouldn't be promoting areas that can't handle additional visitation. And that really has to happen in a quite delicate way and with really good communication with those local park managers. But I think, beyond that, it's a challenge that tourism will have to figure out. And I think the reality is that with the proliferation of social media, visitors and people in general will share what they're doing and talk about our destinations. And MRDT and funding tourism enables us as destination management professionals and to really control that messaging, and for us to be able to put the messaging out that we want. And while it certainly isn't perfect, we feel that we are making incremental improvement on this. And there's certainly a long and complex road ahead. But I would like to think that in partnership with our rec sites and trails and BC Parks and other organizations, we can be more effective in trying to manage that. I don't know, Anthony or Karen, if there's anything else that you'd
I
like
want
to
to
add.
comment. Yeah, I do. So as elected level people here, I am so thrilled that we're having this conversation because it is long overdue. And we feel what you're feeling. We're a small organization, but this is what motivates us, is this conversation. SDGs, all these things that we're talking about, and there is no easy answers. This is all our problem now. And we have decided that we are going to put ourselves at the forefront of this conversation to have it with all of you, all our communities. What you're describing here, it's everywhere on the island now. And I'm almost speechless talk about it, but we need to find a way, and there isn't going to be no easy answer. There's infrastructure needs, there's so many needs. All I can commit to you is we take we talk about, I can't even stress, like, it keeps me up at night. All right. So we're constantly talking about this. We're constantly trying to think, well, we don't, it's not about marketing anymore. When I hear the word marketing, I don't even really pay a lot of attention to it anymore. It's this conversation that we're struggling with right now. And we have a long road to hoe just to convince in our own industry, like at every level. So this is, I could go on and on, but I will offer this. You heard woven into our presentation the need for your area to have some kind of a master plan for tourism. That is a valuable thing for you to consider, all of us to consider, because transportation needs, product needs, all these things, carbon offset, you name it, we could talk about it in that plan. And I think that is a good approach. We have to bundle all this up together, work with our Indigenous communities. This is a big topic. I didn't expect it to go totally the direction of this way today, but I'm so glad, because as we talk about here, no one's really having this in a robust way. They're really not. And apparently all of you want to have it. So we're game. We're game. That's all I can say.
That's fantastic to hear. Director Hillian, I believe you have your hand up.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much for the presentation. Excellent and a good conversation. I have to say it's ironic that those of us who have a background with heritage as settlers are complaining about too many people coming here and changing the landscape. But that's the reality, and we certainly have seen that. I remember when pandemic restrictions first came up, and being out at Nymph Falls and being overwhelmed with people who are so obviously from the Lower Mainland. And I don't think we want to get into a situation like they have up north of Whistler at Joffrey Lakes, where the pressures are just so extreme that you get to a point where people have to start booking reservations to hike a trail. But having said that, I'm wondering what your capacity is to work with other organizations. For example, Friends of Strathcona Park approached the regional district last year and made the point that we have this wonderful asset in Strathcona Park, and there's really a lot of space there, but there's only so many access points. And they were pressing for the need for more access points to take the pressure off the existing ones. And it really is a process of approaching both government and private landowners who control other alternatives. And I'm just wondering if that's something that you have any capacity to engage in. I also want to echo Director Morin's comment about alternate ways of people getting here, and boy, it's probably the best argument I've heard for a rail line in a long time. I don't know whether you want to touch that one or not, but I'd appreciate hearing about your capacity to engage on those access issues.
Callum, do you want to, because Callum's pretty involved in that.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to really add to that one. I definitely think that Strathcona Park is a really major asset, and in some of the work that we were doing with the community of Gold River, I think it sort of connects to some of the challenges you brought. As locals who drive through the park regularly, they've been particularly concerned about where vehicles are parking and the numbers of people at the few access points that there really are. And I think in an even broader sense, part of the challenge, and Joffrey Lakes is honestly a really great example of this, is that people want to experience the backcountry and more alpine environments in particular. And that when you look at areas where we can, provide relatively easy access to the Alpine, Joffrey Lakes is really the best bet in the sort of sea to sky corridor. And I lived in Whistler and Squamish for years, and certainly saw and was upset by the growth that we saw in Joffrey. But I think it's also a symptom of, more people wanting to get outdoors, and, our province not investing in additional infrastructure and outdoor recreation assets. So we're naturally going to have issues where, we don't have new product and new access points coming in, but we have more people wanting to get outdoors. So you can start almost seeing, Joffrey Lakes as a sort of sacrificial lamb, as unfortunate as it is. I think the great thing about Strathcona Park is that it is so large and that it is so challenging to access some of those areas. But I think ultimately the answer for Strathcona and public access and the outdoors is really having better long-term management views of those areas, particularly recognizing how much of central and southern Vancouver Island is private forestry land, where we don't really have adequate opportunities for the public to recreate. So again, I think it's a very long-term challenge, and I think that it's certainly something that the tourism sector and other groups need to really be engaged in.
Well, part of the reason I asked about your capacity is because I expect that you're engaged with provincial government ministries related to the tourism sector, and I just wonder if there's any way we can combine our efforts in the lobbying that we do on these types of issues.
Yes, that absolutely. Sorry, I was going to say yes, we can help you with that. We do that, so no problem.
Great. Any thoughts on the railroad?
You know what? I wasn't going to touch that one. I think where we land on it, if somebody wants to put $1 billion or whatever it's going to take to do that, fine. But we kind of we like the idea of it being a bike trail, or so we're very involved in these conversations, but either way is okay. But I would like to see that corridor utilized. It would be really nice, and a world leading, I want to be able to ride up and down Vancouver Island on that line on my bike is my goal. But if there was a fast bullet train, great, that'd be great too. I don't know what else to say.
Either would be game changers, but we need something to happen there, right? And I think above and beyond everything else, protecting that corridor is kind of the first priority, and that's what gets me excited about the shorter or midterm trail potential. Doesn't eliminate future rail use, but it would be a incredible global experience, I think, if we were able to do that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I'm going to allow Director Grief to ask first time hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for those out there that know me, that know this is going to be in true Uncle Eddie style, I'd like to relate a little story about some friends of mine that I hadn't seen for a long time. And they came out with their family from Alberta, and they stayed at Strathcona in one of the 1958 style autocars that are along the beach there. And I went up and spent a day with them, and it was all the aunts and uncles and nephews and nieces and the kids and whatever, just having a wonderful time. They had you've been up there, that the coast mountains are absolutely stunning, the water, the beach, and everything else. And they went home with memories that would last a lifetime. So, talking to some people up there, actually one person said to me, "We don't want those people on our beach." Well, it's the Queen's Beach, and it's open to everybody. It's what makes Canada so great. So we have to find a way of allowing those families to come and those kids to go home with memories like that. So it really behooves us to pick up the slack where obviously, once again, the province drops the ball. I think maybe we talked about stuff. I think Wendy was dead on that, we're not following the European style where there's tour buses, tour guides, people to park wardens, volunteers, whatever. we can take a lot of the pressure off some of the areas. You talk about the bike trails in Cumberland and Area C in the Backlands. Well, there's also the Forbidden Plateau and all the trails there. So maybe some of the trails less traveled would be a good bet, you know, to spread it out and to make sure that there's a whole, I think, a business opportunity there for people with buses and some entrepreneurial spirit to maybe go around and gather people from hotels and take them on these tours. So I think that's a much more sustainable way of looking at it, rather than everybody in their private cars all the time. But let's not lose sight of the fact that this is Canada and Canadians should enjoy it. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Grieve. I'm going to pop in with a question before I let Director Arbour, just because I do want to also underline a couple of the themes that I'm hearing. You know, a question was put out, you know, to what limit or to what extent are we trying to grow tourism in the Comox Valley? And I read a really interesting article about what's happened in Hawaii, and I guess it's very similar to Joffrey Lake. It sounds like just the impact of tourism was getting to be so bad that it seems like now, you know, there are certain areas of Hawaii that tourists can no longer go to. And those areas were actually designated by the Indigenous community as no-go zones. Tourists need to, they're not passively trained. They actually have to sign a code of conduct when they arrive about how they will be in the community. And then last but not least, I understand there is a fee that's being collected from tourists to pay for some of these impacts and to pay for the infrastructure that enables them to have, you know, a better experience, to be able to afford to pay for the shuttle buses and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if anyone from TEI would like to comment on, you know, can we get there before there's an emergency and before there's like damage? Is there a way to, you know, better manage the tourists that we have?
Yeah. Well, there is an emergency now. So to be clear, we see it as an emergency right now. I know the article that I think I know the article. We've read a number from Hawaii. At your elected level, we need to work together to push other levels of government on this. I think all the things you've just said should be on the table. I don't know what it looks like, but I also think that outdoor spaces are important, not only sacred to Indigenous people, but you know, I've contributed by experiencing them myself, and I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I want her to understand the wild places. So all this, that's why I think I said about balance, and we're just trying to figure out the way forward. It's going to be messy, but I do think that we are at the place of having to contemplate, you know, we're looking at what other destinations are doing. Another place that we look at is like the Netherlands, for example. What COVID did in Amsterdam was it was people who lived there thought, all of a sudden realized, well, we kind of like it here without all these tourists here. So they're actually finding ways to buy up tourist shops to repurpose them for their communities. I mean, there's a whole range of things that need to happen here, and this will be my forever effort until I am no longer on the earth, probably. So that's what it's going to take. It'll be all those options. I really believe that, but I mean, right now we're real, you know, the switch from promotion to this it's an emergency now. So we're dealing with it. And it's not just about promotion. So I've heard growth. I don't know if we use the term growth.
I use the word growth, and now of course I'm need to explain myself.
It's not what our intent is. Growth is not the intent. The growth, if anything, it's moving people to times of the year where there is capacity for them and room for them. And we're very fortunate to live in Vancouver Island in that regard because of seasonal, like the seasonal nature of where we live, and people are coming here. So, you know, I think we face like you face. We tried to, when we knew snowbirds were coming here 2019 into 2020 because of the pandemic. And we now see the numbers, how many more people came here from other parts of Canada for winter, whether they brought RVs or they were in other places to stay. And when we went out to try to get people to move around and explore all areas of Vancouver Island, so we weren't seeing capacity issues, we heard we got a lot of backlash on that too from people who live here. So again, we want to be at the forefront of this and looking at all those options you just said. I just continue to be really encouraged by this conversation. So if I forget, I'm just going to thank you for it. So thank you.
Thanks. Director Arbor. Oh, sorry, Karen, did you want to respond?
I just want to explain the word growth, if I may, just because I don't want to, I don't want it to be on record that it wasn't how anyway, I want to be able to explain. I use the word growth in the context of growth of the brand of Comox Valley. Currently in the perception research that we have done, there isn't a lot of knowledge out there in British Columbia and Alberta, which is where our markets usually are. Those are the people that are coming to Vancouver Island about Comox Valley. And so when I use the word growth of brand, what I'm referring to is what Callum had mentioned, owning your own message. The truth is that people are moving around Vancouver Island no matter what. And coming to Vancouver Island from other places. And so the opportunity lies to be able to control that message more because we are an organization that is keyed into what is happening at BC Parks, what is happening with Indigenous First Nations. And another example of that is, you know, when we have that kind of communication and that kind of knowledge of what's happening, we can put out the messages accordingly. So in WAS is an example, when there was a burial site, we're able to sort of say, okay, like we need to be able to manage any kind of traffic into that area because of that. So I didn't mean to say growth in terms of number of people. It's not about bodies. It's a managed approach, and it's about owning your own message instead of other people doing it for you.
Thanks so much for that clarification. I hope that helps with for the directors too. So we'll go back to Director Arbor.
Thanks. One of these amazing meetings where in an hour and a half, my big question was actually answered, which is, what are we trying to achieve with this involvement in tourism? And it seems like there's a broad consensus that is also supported by TVI and Anthony's comment around moving from promotion to the appropriate management of tourism. And this is great. So the first thing I'll say is, and not only that, rather than just words, gosh, I'm willing to bring a director's letter back to the CVRD asking for us to initiate consideration of a master plan for tourism for the region, which would both kind of bring those principles forward and also maybe create a roadmap for the next number of years to action it. My second point is, when we start our budget process at the regional district the last 2 or 3 years, our financial manager always has this cool quote, and he goes, you know, budget is your values. And what I'm hearing from TVI is, we're not the only community talking about that. You quote said that all of Vancouver Island is thinking the same. From 2014 to 2018, I managed the Destination BC grants for Hornby Island and all the tourism envelopes. So I've got a lot of familiarity with the terrain. I would say that if we are having this kind of shift from promotion to tourism management and the kind of broader, deeper thinking around it, then to me, it becomes really evident that the DBC funding model is broken. And it's exemplified in your budget, because in your budget that you presented, you know, 50 to 70% of the budget is going to marketing and promotion. So we're not going to change that in a year, but I think there's a lobby effort to be done by all Vancouver Island communities to say, post-pandemic, the DBC funding model just doesn't work. And to be honest, I'm not sure that it's needed anymore. You promote and you market when you're behind in the marketplace. Vancouver Island doesn't have that problem. People are coming, right? So that whole transition of mentality, I think, I would hope as we develop a master plan that it starts being reflected in the funding envelopes we have and the actions that we take. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Arbor. I saw some laughing giggles, maybe.
Sorry, that's about the best belly laugh I've had in a long time. So thank you very much for that. And the reason I'm laughing, we agree. Like, that's why I'm laughing. And this is a regular conversation point here. So someday soon, I will be able to come before you and talk about an exciting way forward for what we're doing that touches on many of these things. And you'll see how firmly we believe in it. We're not quite ready to unveil it to you, but what I'd say is we need your help to push government, whether it's the Crown or elsewhere, in this regard. They don't listen to us much anymore. And so we agree, I guess, is all I can say. And I'm giggling to myself thinking, oh boy, I just wish I could record this and play it for a few people, because it's very, very, very frustrating for us. So we agree, is what I'll say. And sorry, please don't, like Callum was laughing, Karen was laughing, I was laughing, just because we talk about this so much, and you put it really well. So we weren't laughing at you. We were laughing in joy almost. So Karen, go ahead. I just
want to add something with regard to the budget. It is being recorded, Anthony. So someone just said that. One of the ways of working within a system like this is to really work the limits of the definition of marketing and the definition of development, and the sort of quote unquote line between the two. And so when you see that budget, what I have done is put, for example, Callum spends quite a bit of time on our community contracts as of late, just sort of putting that sustainability lens, putting that development and infrastructure lens to the things that we're doing. And his team, he has a couple of other people, including Jolene Dick, who is working on the tourism fund right now, and their ability to touch these contracts as well is embedded into some of the money that I call marketing. And that means that we're working within the system, within the language of the system, but it's not necessarily just $300,000 in ads. We're able to sort of fold things in ways that we can present as quote unquote marketing.
That's really great to hear. I just want to go back to Anthony's comment, though, about needing help with changing this model. And I'm wondering if there's a role for advocacy at UBCM on this. And if so, it sounds like the board would welcome potential wording of what we could bring forward. So I'll just leave that open.
Yeah, because it is being recorded. What I'll clarify is we would work with you on that. We believe that we need to relook at this system. So I talked about that, and it isn't about marketing, and there are funds available that keep pushing towards marketing, and that is a problem. So I think we all can recognize that. And I do want to acknowledge the provincial government in well, there's a number of ways, but one is that they have given us, for the first time, where we need your help, is we are putting into what Callum was talking about was $2.3 million that was given to us to build out a number of these things that we're talking about. And that was a support, that was an opportunity we've never had before. So the government has done that. It's through Destination British Columbia was specifically what we were talking about, and the co-op dollars that they provide. And they're very slow to change that model, I guess what I say. But we'd love to help you with wording for UBCM, because I think that is an important part of what needs to happen now.
Thank you. Director Morin.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks. I just sort of going off of some of the things Director Arbour said. I like the idea of us taking a look at having more of a shared vision. I actually think that we have more similarities often than we think between communities in terms of this. And if you look, across the whole island, almost every community is grappling with this and looking at different approaches. And I've been doing some reading about sustainable tourism, and that idea that it's a combination of looking at people or social aspects plus the economic or profit piece plus planet, and the idea of adding culture into that. And when I say culture, I mean the culture of the community, and what are we wanting to reinforce and support. And that may be fewer people, less quantity and more quality. So people, attracting people who want maybe a longer stay with with rich experiences that has less impact, but still provides the economic benefit. And I think if we look at traditional views that we have to have lots of people and we have to have lots of consuming and all of that kind of stuff to bring in the money, right? That's offset by huge impacts that also cost us. I mean, we see that with housing and people, you know, we attract development, we attract money coming in, and then we have lots of social costs to that. So I think if we're looking at a different kind of model here, I think that there are a lot of commonalities in what we want to see. And I think that actually, instead of just having status quo, I think that us being in charge a little bit of what we want and who we want to attract. Do we want busloads of people coming in and having their 2 or 3 days here and high impact, or do we want to provide a different experience? So I welcome the opportunity to be able to have more of a shared vision around this and really look at what we think is important to the culture of our community, rather than only looking at profit, because I think that the benefits will be there if we look at it a little bit differently. So I guess that's, you know, the main thing that I really wanted to stress is it's not necessarily about numbers, and we have an opportunity because of COVID, and we don't have as much of the international travel happening at the moment to really take a look at what we want and how we want to get there. So thanks.
Thanks, Director Moran. Mayor Barrett, please.
Yes, just to add on to that, AVIC is coming up in April. Could we not put in a late resolution to start the process? Because what goes to AVICC goes to UBCM. And it would be nice to get the rest of the island on board with what we're doing as communities.
Good point, Mayor Barrett. Yeah.
And if you need somebody to start that process, I'm sure Cumberland would be up there to do that.
Fantastic. Director Grieve.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, just to quote Joni Mitchell, you take all the trees, you put them in a tree museum and charge the people $1.50 just to see them. I think right now we look at the trees and we look, the highest and best values to cut them all down. So, I mean, tourism has its place. The economy of tourism certainly has its place. Better to have those 500-year-old trees being impacted on the root level by a couple of paths than having the loggers go in there and decimate them. Thank you.
Good point, Director Grieve. Thank you. I wanted to ask a question around the action planning process that happens with TVI, and versus that, and what role does the TAC play in that? If would staff mind just clarifying how that process happens, and is it something that happens separately from a master plan?
Oh, so I don't know, Callum, do you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. So the action planning work that's supported by Destination BC is one good example of how Destination BC is supporting some of that, the management and longer term approach. We, from a capacity perspective, are starting the action planning on the North Island in the regional district of Mount Waddington. We're about halfway through that process now. And I think we've got a good recipe for success that we can mirror in other communities. Up there, we have the Tourism Advisory Committee as the primary group that's being engaged in the process. We've also included several other economic development organizations, First Nation representation, and also some community groups in the process. So it's certainly want it to be a inclusive process. I think a master planning initiative would be a deeper initiative than this action planning. The action plan is really oriented around prioritizing infrastructure investments as it relates to tourism, and that will also help to, from a funding perspective, prioritizing applications for grants and things like that. So it's quite tactical in that respect. I think that a master plan could be very complementary and would provide a broader overview for the entire regional district if that were to be the scope. It could have alignment with the development plan on the regional level and some of the action plan, but it would be I would at least envision it to be a much more comprehensive initiative that would, even have deep engagement with residents as well as a component. So different but complementary would be the vision that I would have at first thought.
Thanks so much for that clarification. I'm going to let Jeff go next since he's a first-time hand up.
Sorry, I'm not a participant. I just wanted to clarify just with Tourism Vancouver Island reps. Like the province has worked with regional groups to develop action plans over time. So I just thought, and I wasn't aware that they would support doing them on individual regional districts by regional districts. And I thought there was an integrated process that sort of overlapped and co-supported destination and exchange of information. So hopefully we're not I just want to make sure we don't have a regional tourism service in place that would do this. I thought much of this work was kind of in place already involving the Oceanside area, ourselves, and the West Coast, and various things like that. So maybe just a little bit of clarification there on future processes or current processes. Sorry.
Yeah, great question. And I think in short, the action planning is, it may take place at a more local level in that we will have hopefully some in-person sessions that are happening in locations that enable folks to not have to travel too far, but that will feed into that broader regional strategy. So it is a higher level lens, and that's where I think a master planning initiative at a regional district level would be able to drill into the minutia in a way that this action planning at that more regional level wouldn't, and regional in terms of Vancouver Island region. So yeah, good point of clarification there.
Thank you.
Sorry, thanks, Callum. Because there's terms, right, that mean something in your industry and regional district, region, so thank you.
I see Director Hillian's hand up.
Thanks again, Chair. I'm just curious if you could share with us what you're seeing across the industry in terms of the challenges with employment, given the pandemic and what we're hearing about in the hospitality industry in particular, and also what you're seeing in relation to the wages in the sector. It strikes me that it's a sector that many more people depend on than previously, but wages still tend to be fairly low.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting topic to continue to work with and monitor. So I think you're going to see government provincially come out with some supports to help retain and then build back. So what happened in the pandemic was people that worked in the industry. So I'll use a kayak company in the North Island that had, because of international visitation in the Broughton Archipelago, 20-year business. They might have employed in the summer, their peak time, 50 people, upwards of 50 people, including kayak guides. They were down to 12 people last summer. So these are trained kayak guides that have left the industry and have no plans to come back. So that is one challenge. Then you have the challenge of the aging population. People aren't coming into the market, and then every industry is having challenges with labor. So all that compounds issues, and then we don't have foreign workers coming in now for certain businesses, et cetera, et cetera. I would say that I think that while it's relatively true, there's a study I read recently that the notion of poorly paid or lower paid, I guess, it's not always the case. And what the businesses, when I talk resiliency, there are many businesses that are paying much more than you would imagine for workers. And there's a big movement that way. The challenge will be there'll be a price issue. We're already seeing price challenges. Canada, before the pandemic, was one of the most expensive places to travel to in the world. We like to travel on Vancouver Island or in our province. All of that will impact what we do, what we pay for. And this is some of the challenges, but there is, I just think many employees are taking the living wage idea seriously and are implementing that. And I'm seeing more and more of that. But it's messy. You see, even in your area, there's competition between and for fighting over available staff and things. And so the industry, but it's bigger than the tourism industry is, I guess what I'm saying. And industry specifically will have some supports. And there's a number of studies that are out there now that I think will be helpful right down to the business level. And certainly our tourism resiliency program has spent a lot of time working on increasing human resourcing, how an employer uses human resourcing like tools and things to make them more sophisticated, keep people working, make them better employers, things like that. So we've been quite involved in that space. And I think this will be the big challenge for the industry in the next decade.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I just want to throw out a cautionary note because there were some suggestions before that we should be going the direction of quality over quantity and maybe longer stays, more intensive experiences. And generally what that means is more wealthy people traveling. And from an equity perspective, I think that's something that we need to be very cautious about. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Hillian. And I'm going to let one more question go. And Director Arbour, you get to close it out.
Yeah, thanks, sir. I talked too much today, but I just want to thank Mayor Baird for potentially, we're not making decisions today, but we've got the whole group here. So it's great to hear that the AVICC UBCM piece might get some traction. And second, unless I just want to hear from our staff, is this something in regards to master plan that we might see at the regional level as part of the financial planning process this year? Or is that something that if we want to see that as elected officials, we should probably flag it to staff in a soon to be meeting?
I think I know the answer to that question, but do any of our staff at the CVRD want to respond?
I can answer that. So we actually, when the budget, 550 budget goes to the board in the 5-year financial plan, we did look at providing funds in 2024 for a tour, what we've just identified as a regional tourism strategy. Certainly, if there is interest from the board, we can consider moving that maybe into 2023, 2022. We've got a lot going on, and getting things moving forward on potential regional tourism strategy or service. So it is in the thinking of staff, though.
Thanks. I want to thank everybody for such a rich and engaging conversation. Many thanks to the staff at TVI for their presentation. I heard lots of comments from our directors around conservation, balance, sustainability, and very much a willingness to work with TVI on moving some of our views forward to both the province and beyond. So thanks for this rich discussion. I think there's going to be many next steps. I look forward to those steps coming forward to the board. And once again, thanks everybody for taking 2 hours of your time out and engaging on this topic. So hope everybody has a great rest of the afternoon. Look forward to connecting again.
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
I guess, we need a motion to terminate. Sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Anyone opposed? Carried. All right. Good afternoon, everyone.